Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for attending today's session. Okay, so today we will have a webinar on an overview of the U.S. labeling requirements. It's around 1 hour and a half. First we will have an introductory a presentation by the Farmer to Farmer Country Director, Mr. Sherbel Abu Haidar.
Thank you, Rawan. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for attending this another session of our webinar trainings that our program is organizing. So I would like to take a few minutes of your time. I know we are all here to hear and learn from our volunteer consultant, Jan, but I would like to talk in a few minutes about our program and about our organization. Many of you attending here already knows us, but for the new people, just a couple of minutes, I will be quick. So, is it changing?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay, you can see the orange screen now. Okay, so first I will talk about our organization. We are part of an NGO in Lebanon called Land O'Lakes Venture 37. Land O'Lakes Venture 37 is affiliated by our company in the U.S., Land O'Lakes Inc., that also I will be talking briefly about. Land O'Lakes Inc. in the U.S. is and still is started and still is farmer-owned dairy cooperatives. Land O'Lakes Inc. works throughout the value chain of agriculture, crop input to seed to animal nutrition to R&D until it reaching the market. In addition to our dairy processing firm in the U.S. that we are well known about, and if you go Google Land O'Lakes, definitely you will see our butter because we are very famous about our butter and dairy product. And in addition to that, Land O'Lakes manage and operates Winfield United, which is a company dealing with agriculture and product inputs. Purina, which is joint ownership with Nestle, that is dealing with the animal nutrition, and Land O'Lakes Truterra, which is dealing with environmental sustainable solution. I'm sharing these companies that Land O'Lakes own and operate in the U.S. just for one reason, to tell you how about the rich background that we have, that we would like to make use of in serving our beneficiaries and partners in Lebanon and in the countries where Land O'Lakes Venture 37 works. So for the one who still don't know us and wondering why our name is called Venture 37, 37 was chosen because it represents the percentage of our earth and land where the farmer grows their crops and where they also raise their animals in order to feed and nourish the world. So that's what we are targeting and hope to assist farmers and producers in having better production and safer production. So we work in a different countries in the whole world. As you can see in this give you a little bit of a brief where we work. An example in Lebanon, in Egypt, Bangladesh, and many countries in Africa, etc. So, that's about the Venture 37, which, as I said, it is an NGO operating in Lebanon, affiliated by Land O'Lakes Inc. This NGO in Lebanon started in 2013 and implementing projects that are funded by the donors. In Lebanon, we are implementing the Farmer to Farmer Food Safety and Quality Program that is funded by USAID and implemented by Venture 37 in Egypt, in Bangladesh, and Lebanon. Our program is for 5 years, and we started in 2018, and we should be ending in 2023. Just to note that the Farmer to Farmer program is not new to Lebanon. It has been since 2008 by a different implementer, and since 2013, Land O'Lakes has won this program, and this is the second round that Land O'Lakes is implementing to support different kind of beneficiaries in agriculture and in food processing. So as I've been talking about support, the program basically recruit local and US volunteer experts in different fields that will donate their time to come to Lebanon or to work remotely on assignment that are of a need from our partners or hosts. So it's a demand-driven program. And we work to fulfill the need of our partners in short-term assignments in agriculture, in food processing, in food safety, which is really the focus of our program, and of course, quality. So we partner throughout this program with different host organizations that are basically food facilities and processors, farmer cooperatives, local foundation, NGOs, universities that also throughout our program, we like to cooperate with them to train their students and offer internship for their graduates in order to increase their technical how that is gained in universities and couple it with practical experience working with our volunteer expert that comes to Lebanon or that collaborate with them remotely due to COVID now. So our approach is to work throughout the Global Markets Program, which is a program that assists young processors and producers in reaching food safety certificates. And so that's the bulk of our assistance. And in addition to that, we have also another small part that also would be demand-driven that's working on product development and other things that also complement the work in food safety through identifying also host organization and identifying the right volunteer to implement our assignment. So as I said, as we started from our name, farmer to farmer food safety and the quality, we specifically are focusing on safety and the quality because it's a consumer demand that is increasing with time in order to have higher quality food and safer food. The international trade, which is really important for everyone, especially for us in Lebanon, countries are asking more, increasing the standards for safer food products to allow us to export. It is vital from farmer to fork across all the sector of the value chain on our national agenda, definitely, and fundamental to health and human productivity. So, a couple of slides, just give you a brief that, as I said, farmer to farmer is not new to Lebanon. It's not new also to Venture 37, being one of the implementer of this program in the world. So we have, throughout our journey with farmer to farmer, we have sent around 1,400 volunteers to 27 countries. Utilized many of our volunteers are from Land O'Lakes Inc., who support us from their expertise. That's why I shared the companies that we work at, and this is the opportunity that we have to have many of those volunteer experts that donate their time throughout our program to support our beneficiaries and supported more than 450 host enterprise. And in this round, we are looking forward to support 50 enterprises in sending around 213 experts and impacting more than 350,000 people in the countries that we are working at. And finally, I'm sharing this picture with you about some of our technical consultants who volunteered and came to Lebanon to assist producers in horticulture, in food processing, in product development, producing ice cream, in food safety, at assessing the facility and different things. And of course, we don't want to forget our collaboration with universities in addition and in parallel of supporting the processor and producers. We are also focusing on supporting what we call the young professionals that will be assisting the producers later on throughout their work career. So basically, this is it. Thank you so much for attending today. The presentation today will be on improving the label and following the international standards. And we truly feel that this is really an important subject that we would like to tackle, and it's an important subject for many producers and processors, especially for Lebanon, because we have an increased need in access the export market, as you all know, due to our economic situation that we are passing through. And the export market, we all know how important it is as one of the things that will help our producers and processors be sustainable and be productive despite the economic challenges that we are passing through. And so we wanted this presentation and benefiting from the time that our expert gave us for this talk to learn more about this requirement. Definitely, in 1 hour presentation, we are not aiming to change products or be like a one-on-one training, but we wanted this to be an eye-opener for what we need to focus on or what a good label should include, to start thinking of this while we upgrade our product label in order to reach a new market, either locally or internationally, which is also of a good importance currently. So thank you all for attending, and I wish you a great webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharbil. Okay, so now we will be introducing Ms. Jan. But first, I want to remind you that if you have any questions during the presentation, please add them to the Q&A session. Section. We will try to answer all of these questions at the end of our presentation. I also want to welcome all the new attendees. And now we will be with Ms. Jan. So Ms. Jan has a wide experience in food safety and quality fields in food manufacturing companies. She was responsible for all corporate and production facilities, food safety, regulatory, and draft services for a $500 million wholesale bakery manufacturer and distributor. She also led development and implementation of a supplier quality management program for a $3 billion international bakery supply company. She holds a master's and BS degree in food science from the University of Minnesota with a minor in economics and business administration. After observing that many small and medium-sized businesses struggle to achieve the increasingly stringent demand of regulatory agencies and customers, Jan started her own consulting business in which she assists companies in developing, implementing, and maintaining robust quality and food safety programs and regulatory solutions. In addition, Jan is a member of the IFT, FSQ, and IAFP. She is a certified food scientist and a certified quality engineer, food safety and quality auditor, and a certified manager of quality and organizational excellence. So please welcome with me, Ms. Jan.
Good morning, or I guess it's evening there. Good morning here. I'm in Minnesota in the USA. I'm going to turn my video on. I just wanted to say hi. I'm going to turn it off and then we'll go from there. Welcome. We have a lot of information to cover in a fairly short amount of time. So this is going to be clearly just an overview. Things to consider at the end of the presentation, there is a pretty thorough list of resources for you to find more information.
Okay, so Jan, just before we start, we have a couple of poll questions, just as we agreed to know our attendees. Okay. So I will start with the 3 questions before this presentation.
Okay, I will wait for you to tell me to go.
So please, guys, answer the question. Okay, so for the first question, Jan, we have 5% students, 77% food processors of the attendees, and 18% professors. Okay. For the second question, have you ever exported your products to the US? So we have 48% who answered yes, 30% answered no, and the rest, which is 22%, they are students and professors, so no. And finally, the third question, are you familiar with the US labeling requirements? So we have 60% said yes, they are familiar, and 40% no. So, yeah, Jan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. That's good. We're going to try to, for the 40% who aren't familiar, we're going to try to give you, like I said, just an overview, a lot of detail. I've been to classes for this that have lasted 3 or 4 days. So, and I have lots of experience in it. So the topics that we are going to cover are first of all, the top labeling reasons for U.S. FDA import rejections from Lebanon, which is kind of interesting. Then we'll go into quite a bit of detail into the FDA 5 required label elements. And we'll talk about other supporting things like where do you put things on the label? What size font do you use for your type? What are your product pictures? What should they look like? And a couple of interesting newer things that are required, a bioengineered food disclosure law and a country of origin labeling. And then there's a good file or a good list of resources for you. So the top, and I want you to keep these in mind for a minute. Top reasons from 2014 to 2021 were no required nutrition information. The name and address of the manufacturer, packer, or distributor was gone or was missing. All of the major food allergens were not listed on the product. No or incorrect ingredient statement, and it lacks an accurate statement of quantity of contents. Interestingly, that on the ingredient statements, besides the fact that it needs to include the ingredients, they included in this reason that if there was a beverage containing a fruit or vegetable juice that doesn't show the percent of fruit or juice or vegetable in the juice, they put that into the same category as there, which is a little odd. So this then looks quite familiar, right? It's product name, the quantity of content, the nutritional information, the declaration of ingredients, which we will take that and go into allergens after that, and then the manufacturer distributor information. So really the problems that have happened in rejections from Lebanon due to labeling are in the major required elements. Now, I mentioned that there's really good resource page at the back with a lot of links to different websites that will be helpful to you. One of the things I want to bring your attention is this food labeling guide, the FDA food labeling guide. It hasn't been updated since January of 2013. However, it has a lot of very valuable information. The main thing that is different is FDA has changed the requirements for the content and the formatting of the nutrition facts panel. So there's other resources for you for that. So don't look at that, but other in this resource. But this is a really, really good thing that I still go to occasionally myself. So just take a quick glance at this because we're going to look at it in thoroughly. A friend of mine posted this onto Facebook and said, finally, lentils I will like. and they're little red hot cinnamon candies. So we'll talk a little bit more about what is wrong on this label as we go by. I have to remember to thank her for giving us such a wonderful example to use for this webinar. So let's talk about product names. They can't be false or misleading. They have to describe the product in a way that consumers know what they're buying. And if you're using a fanciful name, for example, I had a client that had something that sounded something like snacking sweet. And they needed to have on their label that it was a snack mix with candy pieces and peanuts. I recommend that if you have specific nuts or peanuts that are in the product, since people are so allergic to those, that it's good to add it with the into the common or usual name of the product, so that it easily alerts people to what is in the product. Here's an example. You may recognize this. This is Crispy Delights. That's the fanciful name, but it also says caramelized almonds with sesame, which is really clear, calls out the allergens and makes it easy to understand what is in the product. So good job. And we're going to talk about the flavor designation in the product name. So you can't just call your product anything you want. There are rules around this. So we'll talk about, first of all, flavor. I probably shouldn't have used this picture of strawberry shortcake. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It has a biscuit-like cake that is layered with whipped cream and strawberries traditionally. That's the way my mom made it. But anyway, it shows strawberries, but in some cases, there aren't actual strawberries in a commercial product. So here's several examples of how that strawberry would be presence or lack of presence or content of flavoring would be used in a specific product name. So say you have strawberry shortcake and you don't have any or very few strawberries in it, not enough to provide a flavoring, and you use natural strawberry flavoring to kind of bump that flavor up and make it more prominent, you would call it natural strawberry flavored shortcake or strawberry flavored shortcake. Say the same situation, strawberry shortcake with no strawberries, and it has in it artificial strawberry flavor. So the other was natural, this is artificial. You would call it artificial flavored strawberry shortcake or strawberry shortcake artificially flavored. So see, there's subtle differences between these, but this is important in making sure that your product name is not misleading. Again, strawberry shortcake with no strawberries. If it has natural strawberry flavor, but it also has other natural flavors, maybe a cherry flavor or something to just boost up that strawberry flavor a little bit, you would call it strawberry flavored shortcake with other natural flavors. Say you have strawberry shortcake again with no strawberries, but it has artificial vanilla flavor, and it has artificial strawberry flavor. You would call it strawberry shortcake with artificial strawberry and vanilla flavors. So the major point here is that you want to make it not misleading. So you want to make sure that consumers understand if they are getting the actual product, in this case, the strawberries in there, or if they're getting flavor from strawberries, or if they're getting artificial flavor, because some people that is important. And now I have a real life example where one of my jobs, when I was, it became aware, I found out that we were selling these horrible looking green, lots of food coloring, quote unquote, pistachio muffins that had no pistachios in them, but had walnuts and had artificial pistachio flavor. Well, clearly you just can't call them pistachio muffins because there's no pistachios, right? So they weren't very happy, but I made them change the name to artificial pistachio flavored muffins with walnuts. It's important that the walnuts get called out because somebody might be able to eat pistachios, but cannot eat walnuts. So it's important to have that in the name. And you can't call it pistachio muffins when there's no pistachio. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about geographical references and product name. I'm not sure how common this is in other parts of the world. So it just can't be it's misleading if the product's not made in the geographical region that is called. For example, you can use the word style, like Chicago style pizza. I don't know if any of you have ever had Chicago style pizza, but it's one of my favorite things to get when I'm in Chicago. And it's basically an inside out, upside down pizza, but it's with the sauce on the top and the cheese on the bottom. But it's they call it Chicago style pizza instead of Chicago pizza because it's not necessarily made in Chicago. There are a couple of different situations that you might come into, and there are more besides this, but I'm just going to share two. One is with butter. If you're going to use butter in the name of the product, it has to be the only fat in the product. I was talking with my son yesterday, and I was saying we had in the same company as the pistachio muffins, we had a butter loaf cake, but it also had soybean oil in it. But they called it. This was before I got there. These names were set, and then I had to kind of go through and clean up the mess. They called it a butter loaf. And when I said you can't do that because there's additional fat in there that's not butter, they told me, well, it's okay because this other company is doing it. Well, that's not the way it works. So if there's butter in shortening, there has to be enough butter for the butter to be characterizing. That means the flavor that you get when you bite into it has to be from the butter. And then it should be called butter flavored because it's flavoring it. And if it has any artificial butter flavor, then it has to be called artificial butter flavored, butter artificially flavored, or artificial butter. So apparently at some point in the history of the US, this artificial versus actual flavoring was a really important situation. And so they're very strict on how you call things out. Chocolate are my favorite foods. There are some products where people expect to contain cocoa powder instead of actual chocolate. And those would be like a chocolate cake. If you make a chocolate cake at home, you typically don't melt chocolate and put it in the batter. You usually use cocoa powder. Same with cookies and pudding and milk. So those are fine to be called chocolate because consumers expect those to contain cocoa. But other products where they expect it to have only chocolate and not cocoa can't be called chocolate if they're made with cocoa. Chocolate bars don't typically have cocoa in them. But in chocolate, so if you're going to call something chocolate, the only source of fat can be cocoa butter. And if it's a milk chocolate, milk fat. If you're using a vegetable oil in as part of the fat, it's called chocolate and vegetable oil coating. And if you can reference it as chocolate and the specific kind of fat, like chocolate and coconut oil coating. And they can't, if they're used coating, you can't call it chocolate. So some people will call it chocolatey, like it tastes like chocolate, but it's not. So those are just two examples where the name of the product is important and is spelled out clearly in the FDA regulations. Now we're going to go back to our cinnamon lentils. Clearly, these are not legumes. They're not things that you put into a soup or a stew, which happens to be one of my favorite ingredients. And if you can read the ingredient statement, there is artificial flavor, but there is no cinnamon. So not only are they not lentils, there's no cinnamon in here. So a more appropriate name would be cinnamon candies artificially flavored. Or you could come up with a fanciful name for them other than like cinnamon red hots is what we typically call these because it has the spicy kind of cinnamon. So that we're going to go through this one by one and see as we go through these different important parts of the label and see what they did wrong here. Here, interesting enough, I found on the internet, or you can find anything, actual lentils, like the legumes, like the things that you would put in a stew that are flavored with cinnamon sugar. So this, in this case, calling these cinnamon sugar lentils is absolutely accurate because it's not a candy. Okay, this one is not that difficult, but I see people doing it incorrectly all the time. How much product is in the package? So the net quantity of contents, the net quantity statement provides that answer of how much food is in the container or the package. So this is the weight of the package with the food minus the package, just the food. So here's some examples from formatting. This is right out of that labeling guidebook that I told you about. So there's different ways you can do it, but it's important that it says net weight. It's important that it has both metric measurements and then more U.S. customary, which is things like ounces, pounds, or fluid ounces. So it has to be expressed in either a weight, a measure, or a numeric count. The plurals that you see here, or periods here, are optional. They do take up a little space on your label, and you could, if you said 1 or 3 pounds, you could put an S at the end of it. So that's optional. It should be placed in the bottom 30% of the principal display panel. We'll talk about that in a bit. In lines generally parallel with the base of the package. This is so consumers can find it every time. They want to know how much they're getting in this package versus a competitor's package. They know where to look. So back to here, we've got our cinnamon lentils. It says 2 pounds. So this is supposed to be at the 30%, bottom 30% of the label. So it should be down here. It doesn't say net weight, and it doesn't include the metric quantity of it. So it should say net weight 2 pounds, 900 grams. So that is another thing that this wonderful example gave us to look at. Okay, nutrition facts panel and can be very complicated and very confusing. So I'm just going to hit the highlights here and then point you to some references. You need to get nutritional data, first of all. You need to know what is the nutrition in the individual ingredients. That's the first step. That data can come from nutritional calculation software, from this website, which is has a database, several databases actually, with nutrition for specific food items. It could come from laboratory analysis of the food. The other thing that I didn't list on here is suppliers. Lots of times if you buy an ingredient, they will provide you with the nutrition information for that supply, for that product. Some companies use the software, the database. Laboratory analysis tends to be more expensive, but software that you would use really varies in the cost and the features. So you might be able to find a free nutrition facts panel generation software on the internet where you put the numbers in, but you have to get to those numbers to put into the form. If you do decide to go to the software, what I have learned is you need to be able to save the ingredients you add, to save the recipes for the food product, and to generate the nutrition facts panel automatically. And you should be able to choose the language you want. The software that I use only provides labels in English and French. So it works for the US and it works for Canada, but it doesn't work beyond there. So here are the basic steps we're going to go through of how you create a nutrition facts panel. Again, this is a very simple overview, but the first thing, as we were just talking about, was to compile your nutrition information for all your individual ingredients. And you can get those from the databases or the software or from your suppliers. So that's the first step to start. Then you need to calculate the amount of each nutrient that the various individual ingredients contribute to that overall finished product based on the percentage of each ingredient in the finished product. And that gets a little more complicated. So the nutrition software is helpful there. Then you need to define how many servings per container. And we're going to talk about that in more in a minute. And once you know what the total nutritional value for the finished product is, you need to know how many nutrients per serving, because this is what's important to consumers. They don't really care how many calories are in the whole box of cereal they bought, but they would really like to know how much is in the portion that they eat for breakfast. And then you have to figure out the percent daily value for each nutrient. So the percent daily value is how much of the recommended amount of this nutrient is this food serving providing? And I'll show you that. And then finally enter it into the nutrition facts panel. So this next slide has, this isn't the easiest to see, but I think you can read it. This is to find out how many servings and serving size and servings per container. And you start, the first thing you say is it a single serving package? So I have a bottle of electrolyte water that I have sitting here. It's water, it's an electrolyte water beverage, and one bottle would normally, you'd consider that a serving. On this one, it happens to say there's 2 servings per bottle. And that's because of, well, there's a rule. If a single serving could be up to 200% of the rack. The rack is the reference amount customarily consumed. And I'll show you in a minute where you get that. So if it's one serving size, like maybe a candy bar, where nobody is really going to save half of it for another time, then it should, then you just do it for the whole package. The next step, if it's not a single serving, is to find the rack from the product category list. I'll show you that in a minute. Choose your household measure. And when you're looking at the serving size, you have to list both the household measure and the gram weight. So this, the order of preference in these household measures would be cups, tablespoon, teaspoons, and pieces. So that's how you would define to consumers what they would expect. A consumer won't know what 33 grams is, but they will understand if you say 33 grams is a tablespoon. Then you got to find out which of those household measures is closest to the rack. So you're going to actually physically weigh them, find out. And then based on the weight of the household measure closest to the rack, you'll select your serving size. And then there's rounding rules that are in the resources for finding out how many servings per container. So I've spoken about rack multiple times. Here's a link for a table. Here's a sample rack table for fats and oils. So if it's butter, margarine, or shortening, the reference amount is 1 tablespoon. And your label statement would be for what is the serving. For butter, margarine, orange, it would be 1 tablespoon and then have the grams in the middle. Or if it's liquid, it would be 1 tablespoon, 15 milliliters. If it's a powder, your reference amount is 2 grams. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that, sorry. Would be how many teaspoons. If it's a dressing for salad, your reference amount is 30 grams. So it would be how many grams, how many tablespoons, how many grams, or how many tablespoons, what the corresponding number of milliliters. For mayonnaise or a mayonnaise type sandwich spread or dressing, the reference amount is 15 grams, and it would be this, how many tablespoons and how many grams is how you would put it onto the label. For spray type fats and oils, this one's an odd one. The serving size, the recommended reference amount is 0.25 grams, which is about blank seconds spray. So you would have to figure that out. And this is for things like a pan spray that you would, is in a aerosolized can, and you spray it and it puts out different vegetable oils to help you have a non-stick pan. Okay, this might be kind of hard to see, but this is a picture of the nutrition label in this new one. Remember, I talked at the beginning that the food labeling guide, don't use it for nutrition facts panels because it's been updated. So this kind of shows you, and when you get a copy of the slides, you'll be able to see easier how it lays out and what is different. So the top part in this example is 8 servings per container, and the serving size is 2/3 of a cup or 55 grams. And this little thing over here talks about this. It's not a recommendation on how much you should eat. It's what's typical for people to eat. The second part, okay, so serving size has been increased in prominence in the new nutrition facts panel, because people need to know that when they, for example, when I had my cereal this morning, when I kept adding more because I had too much milk, yeah, that I wasn't meeting the proper serving size. I was exceeding it. Calories, they focus on the new nutrition facts panel on the calories. So you can see calories is large. This is just to help people understand if you want to manage, either lose or gain or maintain your weight, this is important. Then here are all the nutrients. There's differences here. There's an added sugar, includes blank grams of added sugar. That's a new thing. And the down here at the bottom, the vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium, there's some changes in those nutrients. So those are the nutrients and dietary fiber you want to get more of. Your fat, your saturated fat, and your sodium are things you want to eat less of. But it tells you how much is in this product. The percent daily value is another thing that has the numbers that have been changed. So there's a reference for that in the reference page. How much of it? Basically, when you look at these, 10% or 5% or less is low for the items you don't want to eat much, and 20% is high. So you've got down here, calcium is 20%, iron is 45%. That means those are good sources of those nutrients. When you look up here, total fat is 10%. That's not low. Saturated is, I can't see what it says. Let me look up here, 5%. So that's pretty low in saturated fat. Sodium's 7%. That's not low. And it tells you the numbers here as well. And the final thing is the footnote, which tells you explains the percent daily value is based on a daily diet of 2,000 calories. Now, that really varies person to person. We track individually, folks in my family track calories. For me, I only get about 1,200 a day because I'm very short. I'm very petite, so I don't need additional calories for that. My son is 6 feet tall and is a big guy, and he gets like over 2,000 calories a day. So that really, they're not telling you to eat 2,000. They're just saying, here's a reference amount for you to focus on. If you need less, then eat less. So here's some of the information on the updated panels. Serving size is bold and is on the right side. The calories is big, no smaller than 22 point in bar and bolded. Added sugars is in here, and the mandatory vitamins and minerals in this one are listed side by side. In the next one, it points out that underneath the word nutrition facts, there's a hairline between there, and the heading for nutrition facts is full width of the panel, and calories is no smaller than 16 points. So you can see that the actual value for the calories is larger print than this. And here the 4 mandatory nutrients are listed vertically. I want to go back to the other one for a minute. You might be hard for you to see, but vitamin D and potassium are abbreviated on the side-by-side nutrients. But you'll see on when they're listed vertically, they are spelled out. So they do give you some thing for that. So let's look at our lentils. It says the serving size is 36 pieces, and it doesn't include the metric serving. It doesn't list the servings per package. It doesn't include the required vitamins or minerals, and it includes 0 grams added sugar. But if you look at the ingredient statement, sugar is the first ingredient, which it means it's the most prominent. So I really don't think that they have 0 grams added sugar. So they had a lot of issues on their nutrition facts panel. Okay. Nutritional claims. We're not going to talk about these other than to say they exist. The nutrition labeling guide book from FDA has good information on these, but I really recommend that you visit the FDA website to look, because they keep adding things. They keep adding additional health claims or things. So it's good to double check with that. Declaration of ingredients. So ingredients have to be in descending order of predominance. So that means by weight, whatever you have most in your formula is going to be listed first. And the typical way of doing this, if there are sub-ingredients, is to list your first ingredient and then in parentheses list the sub-ingredients, then the next component, and then its sub-ingredients. You can, if you have the information for those ingredients that shows exactly in component A, how much, what percent of component, oops, sorry about that. What percentage of component alpha is ingredient 1, 2, and 3? You can actually put those into your overall nutrition or ingredient label, but you don't usually get that information from suppliers. And so this is what you see most often. If you have things that are less than 2% of the formula, you can say they don't have to be in descending order. They can just say, you put this at the end of the ingredient statement, and it says contains less than 2% of. One of the way that we used to do it in the companies I worked with was to list them alphabetically, so there's no question that they're not in order. But it has that qualifying, the statement. It doesn't have to be less than, it can be less than 2%. If you want, instead of 2%, it could be 1.5 or 1 or 0.5%. Most people just use 2% if they do this at all. What this does is allows you to make some minor changes to your product's formula over time without having to change your ingredient statement. So there's all kinds of rules for special ingredients, and we're running really short on time. So I'm going to go through these really quickly, okay? There's two kinds of colors. There's colors that are subject to certification that are listed before, except for you don't, I'll show you. I'll just show the list. Okay. You don't have to say FD&C. You don't have to say NO period for number. You can just say blue number 1, blue number 2. If it's a lake, then you do have to say lake in the thing. And then color name, red, yellow, blue, whatever, has to be capitalized. So those are for certified colors. If they're not certified colors, then you can declare them as artificial color, or you can say artificial color added or color added. If you're adding artificial color, yeah, that's how you would name it. Or you can say it colored with this or blank color. For example, food spices added for color can be declared as spice color, like turmeric or beet powder is often used for color. And you could just say turmeric color. If they're both for spice and color, and you'll see this again in another slide, you would say turmeric, spice, and color. Okay, who recognizes what coloring agent is in your cola product? It's caramel color, and caramel color is very widely used, but it typically contains sulfiting agents. And so you need to make sure that, and we'll talk about sulfites in a few minutes, but you need to make sure that you're calculating if the finished product has enough sulfites to require labeling. Also, if you have a color, this is what I was about to say earlier, if you have either natural or artificial color that you've added to the product, you can't call the product natural. There's not a good definition in the US of what the term natural means. Food manufacturers have been asking for that from the FDA for many years and have not succeeded, except for the fact that color, if it is colored, it can't be called natural. Spices and flavorings, my favorite. Can be declared as spices, flavor, natural flavor, artificial flavor, or whatever combination you want. If you want to list the name of the specific spice, you're welcome to do that. But you can name all of your individual spices together under the term spices. You do have to make sure you list any of the top allergens. Artificial color contains milk, for example. If you're selling it as a spice, if I'm selling a jar of cinnamon, it has to say on it that the ingredients are cinnamon. That's so people know what they're buying. And if it's a spice blend, I went out to the kitchen last night, grabbed my jar of Chinese 5-spice blend, and the ingredients are listed here. You can see them, how they're all spelled out, the individual ingredients that are in that spice blend. We already talked about spice and coloring on paprika, turmeric, saffron, beet powder, other things that are used by both. Now, onions, garlic, celery, and those kinds of powders. So these are things that have been ground, that have been, hold on a second, let me get to the right words, ground up or pulverized or whatever. Those are considered foods by consumers, not spices. So they have to be listed with their comment. If you really want to know what some of the lists of spices are, they'll be listed in the notes. So it's allspice, anise, basil, bay leaves, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read them all. Chemical preservatives. So if you're going to use a chemical preservative that's approved for food, it has to include two things: the common or usual name and the function or the purpose of it. And terms for purpose could be preservative, or to retard spoilage, or a mold inhibitor, or to help protect flavor. So you would typically say, here's the name of the ingredient, and then put this in parentheses afterwards. To promote color, incidental additives are complicated. So this is ingredients at an incidental level, has no function or purpose in the finished product, then it doesn't have to be on the label. And it's usually there because it's an ingredient of another ingredient, or it's a processing aid that's added and then removed from the food, or is converted to something already present in the food. So a processing aid might be if you're working in a bakery, or if you ever baked at home, you know that when you go to cut out your cookies, you have to put some flour down. And then when you're done, you brush the flour off, because who likes a floury cookie? And then you bake them. So that would be something that was removed. It helped with the processing and removed. Or another example, in hot weather, large industrial bakeries add ice to their bread dough. And they do that because the mixing process heats it up. And adding the ice, it just converts it to water. So you don't have to add ice to your ingredient statement, because in the end, it just becomes water. If these incidental additives have allergens in any amount, it doesn't matter how much, they have to be declared. And here's a link for more information in the regulations on this, because it's kind of confusing. Sulfites, we talked a little bit when we talked about caramel color, so we're going to breeze through this. Unless they have to be declared unless they have no technical effect in the finished product and are at an insignificant amount. That's the key word here. So a detectable amount is 10 parts per million, and then you have to label it. And this is in the finished product. An insignificant amount is less than 10 parts per million, and then you don't have to. If you look at your colas or your soda pops, you'll see that they typically say caramel color, but they don't usually list sulfites because it's not enough in the finished product. Here's the list of what sulfiting agents. Oops, I'm sorry. These are what you would typically see. And also note that in the United States, sulfiting or sulfite is spelled with an F, not a PH like it is in Canada or Europe. These are really simple. Salt is salt. Sodium chloride is salt. Monosodium glutamate has to be declared as monosodium glutamate, not as MSG. Artificial smoke flavors. This created an interesting conversation here yesterday. These are fake artificial smoke flavors. And it's really important, apparently, to make sure that it is clear that this product or this flavoring or this sauce has not been smoked, and doesn't really have a true smoked flavor from the smoking process. So just something to be aware of. Oh, it's you would declare it as artificial flavor or artificial smoke flavor. Sugar enriched flour. Sugar is sucrose, and it comes from either sugar cane or sugar beets. And so any sucrose you'd list as sugar. You could call it cane sugar or beet sugar if you want. Other sugars like glucose or fructose need to be labeled as glucose or fructose. If you're using something with a candy, confectioner's glaze is the term that you would use. It doesn't need to say shellac. People get kind of freaked out with the word shellac. They think it means something that you would put on wood. Enriched flour, you have to list the enrichment ingredients as some subcomponents of the flour. You know, remember within the parentheses. If it lists iron and then in parentheses reduced iron, just list it as reduced iron. You don't have to have that duplicate list there. Okay, then we have a really unusual thing called and/or labeling, where due to availability, seasonability, and cost, you can do this kind of special. So the labeling where it says you use this or you use that. And fat and oil ingredients are the most common, where it will say, you could call it vegetable shortening, but then you have to say contains one or more of the following: cottonseed, palm seed oil, soybean oil in that format. Or you can leave out the vegetable shortening and just say cottonseed oil and or palm seed oil and or soybean oil. So that's a nice thing that gives you some flexibility if you need to be changing your source of fat. Leavening agents are the same thing, same way: dough conditioners, yeast nutrients, and firming agents like you would find in pickles. So these are the things where you can say, you know, leavening agents contains baking soda, whatever, sodium phosphate, whatever the leavening agents. Dried fruits and nuts. Dried fruits, you have to identify that they are dried. So, because you don't want to imply that they're fresh. So here's in a way I would do it: dried fruit, and then fruit and other ingredients. So like dried apples and sulfur dioxide. You want to make sure people find that it's not misleading. However, there are exceptions: raisins and dates. Everybody knows raisins and dates are dried, so you don't have to say dried raisins or dried dates. And never list nuts as only nuts or tree nuts. They have to be listed by their specific species. So coconut, walnut, the common name of their species, Brazil nuts, pecans, cashews, whatever. Okay, so back to our cinnamon lentils. Usually ingredient terms are listed in either all capital letters or in words with the first letter is capitalized. They have cornstarch in here twice. One with a space, one without a space. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to have the space. So that's a mistake. And then they have red 40. So remember we talked about when we were talking about the certified flavors, the R needs to be capitalized, and you need to have a number sign in front of the 40. So it should say red 40. So they have all kinds of issues there. Okay, allergen. We could spend days on allergens, but we're going to blow through this fairly quickly. In the United States, we now have the big 9. You can see them listed here in the little graphic. When they say shellfish, well, we'll get into that. Sesame has been added. That's the first time. And if you, here's a link for you to look more. And then your tree nuts, just like we were just talking, your fish or your crustacean must be listed and treated as a separate allergen, each one. So if you have almonds and you have pecans, you can't use, they can't be just called tree nuts. Incidentally, coconut's a tree nut, That was kind of a surprise when that list came out from FDA. And mollusk and shellfish are not allergens, where crustacean shellfish are. 2 ways to declare allergens. One is in the ingredient statement, where you would use like whey and then put milk in parentheses to make it clear that the whey came from an allergen milk. Or listed immediately after the ingredient statement with the word contains. So contains milk, soy. And here we talked about this before, so we're not going to go into it, but it has to be in individual things. If there's no benign allergens in the product, you don't need a contains statement. One interesting side note, if you have refined, bleached, and deodorized oils, then they don't have allergenic proteins, but you need to check with your supplier to make sure, or you might want to have them tested. So you don't need to list them as allergens, and they don't have to be in the contain statement, nor do you have to treat them as allergens in your facility. So that's kind of a nice thing. But you do need to check the status, because you might have oils that are first press or cold press that might have protein in them still. Some companies choose to include a voluntary statement after the contain statement that talks about other things, other allergens used in the facility. For example, this product is produced from shared equipment with tree nuts or peanuts. But if it has only one but not all tree nuts, it could say with other tree nuts and peanuts. If it has peanuts and no tree nuts, it could say, the product could say with tree nuts. What you need to know about this is that you have to also look at your allergens that come from your suppliers. So if you have a specification for an ingredient and it has, you know, every single allergen under the may contain statement, you better talk to that supplier and find out why do they have that many allergens in their statement. Do they not know if their sanitation and allergen cross-contact practices are okay? You need to make sure. You might not want to use that ingredient or an ingredient from that supplier. Now, it's important to note, and FDA has been very clear about this, the facility is still responsible for adequate care to make sure allergens don't get in the wrong products. And this should be based on a thorough risk assessment, whether or not to use these statements. Allergen labeling regulations may be different in other countries. And if you're going to export, it's really important to be aware of the labeling rules in the country where the product's going to be sold. So here's just a few examples of allergens are up here, and then there's different things. For example, USA, milk is just cow's milk, but in the EU, it's milk from any farm animal. And then over here on the right, you can see a few other things that have changed. And here's the source for that. If you would like more information, there are many more countries listed. So on our lentils, we have an allergy alert that talks in great detail about how they prevent allergens from getting in their products where they don't belong. And they have peanuts, tree nuts, soy milk, and wheat ingredients. This is really unusual to have something that big if you don't have allergens in the product. This is easy, manufacturer. You gotta let people know who made the product and whether it's who manufactured it or who distributed it. Here's what's required. It's typical to also include a website or a contact information, for example, an email or a phone number for people to reach you with complaints. And then let's look back here. It says packed exclusively for, and then instead of saying the name of it, I have it blacked out so that you don't see the process or the brand name. It's unusual to show your logo here. So it has the logo here and it has the logo above the cinnamon lentils. So that's odd way of doing it. Okay, where do you put this stuff on the label? This is actually quite quick and easy. There's two things. There's a principal display panel, or a PDP we call it, and there's an information panel. So the information the PDP is here. The information panel is always to the right. If the next surface is not big enough, it would be the following right, but that's typically how it works. The principal display panel has the statement of identity or the name of the product and the net quantity statement. We talked about those. So here's an example, any brand rice with a picture, and then it's kind of hard to see, but it says net weight, any brand sweet peas, and then it says how much sweet peas are in there on the front. So those are the things that go on the front. The information panel has pretty much everything else. One of the things that is important is if FDA requires an item on the label, there should not be any intervening material on that information panel. So these things are, we talked about the name and address. You're allowed to put a photo on the front side. Your packer or manufacturer, packer, distributor, ingredient list, nutrition label, and any required allergen label should not have intervening material between it. So here's an example of a principal display panel, and then here's their information panel. This one has nutrition facts and then ingredients and then manufactured by, and this one has them side by side, the nutrition facts and the ingredients, and then has the address down here. And here's an example of the intervening material. Here's nutrition facts, and then they have a picture, and then they have the ingredients, and that's not allowed. Interestingly enough, UPC barcodes that you use, the GTIN numbers that you put on a package so that it can be scanned, are not are considered intervening material because they are not required by FDA. So you wouldn't want to throw that between your nutrition facts and your ingredients. Okay, back to our lentils. See here, it says underneath the ingredient statement, it says country of origin, United States. We'll talk about country of origin in a minute, but it's not required for this product. So it's intervening information between the ingredient statement and the allergen alert and the packed exclusively for. So it shouldn't be, it just shouldn't be there. If you want to put it there, you should put it over on the right side where it has very interesting things like warning about suffocation from the plastic bag. I've never seen that on a food product, but whatever. And that this candy is not for children under 5 years old due to a choking hazard. Those are interesting things that are unusual to have on a package. Okay, the label type side requirements. We are not going to go into this because it's a lot of, it would take forever and it's redundant. And look at that FDA food labeling guide for everything except for, look for the changes to the nutrition facts panel label for reference for the NFP, because it has different things. We talked about that where the calorie amount has to be high, the size of the word calories is smaller, that kind of thing. Product photos. This might look familiar. Product photos should be clear and not be misleading. And they have to be photos of actual product and not props for food styling. So you may have heard or seen on the internet where people have used for like cookbooks, for the photos in cookbooks, they might use mashed potatoes for ice cream because the ice cream melts under the lights when they're doing the photography. When I was in college, I worked at a food photography studio, and it was quite amazing what they used. This is clearly a good picture of a product. It's a little bit stylized, but you can see the layers. You can see that it says chocolate enrobed wafer with chocolate cream filling and peanuts. See the peanuts, see the chocolate cream filling, you can see the chocolate enrobing. That's a good photo. Now I'm going to talk about two relatively new requirements. One is the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Law. This is a mandatory labeling required by USDA, so the United States Department of Agriculture, and not FDA, for disclosing foods that may or may not, or may or are bioengineered. So bioengineered is defined as those that contain detectable genetic material that has been modified through certain lab techniques and cannot be created through conventional breeding or found in nature. So here is the list of the foods that USDA has declared to be bioengineered and are required to have this disclosure so consumers know when they're buying a product that it contains ingredients that have been bioengineered. Corn and soybean have been bioengineered for many, many years. You will notice on here there's no wheat. Sometimes people will talk about that, but wheat is not bioengineered in the United States. So if you have these kinds of these ingredients, you do have to declare that on the label as being bioengineered. That will be changing, updated annually. So keep a look at, there's a link in the references to make sure. So how are you going to tell people about it? You can have text on the package. You can have symbols. This is the 2 symbols they have that you can use. You can have an electronic or digital link, a QR code, learn more about bioengineered foods in this package, and then have a QR code. Or you can ask people to text to a certain number, and then you can text them the information back. There's some of the wording that I found on products at my house. Partially produced, contains a bioengineered food ingredient. Ingredients are derived from a bioengineered source. So just be aware of those. That needs to happen. Country of origin is very complicated. We're going to go through this very quickly. Country of origin means the country of manufacture, production, or growth of any foreign object entering the United States. Further work of material, if you do something that transforms the raw material, right? If you transform it into something else, then it changes, right? So if I buy macadamia nuts from another country, and they come in, but they're chopped in a second company, and then they are sent to us, then it's that second company or country who's would be considered the country of origin. We'll go through the covered commodities. If they're produced in another country, they retain that original date. Here's the date. Here are the foods that are regulated for this. There are other USDA foods that are meats that I'm not including, talking about here, but you should be looking for those as well. So perishable agricultural commodities are fresh and frozen fruits and vegetables, peanuts, macadamia nuts, pecans, and ginseng. Really specific. So this isn't something you have to worry about on everything, but it's very specific to these types of ingredients. And for the perishable agricultural commodities, produced means harvested. And if the commodity, these, is an ingredient in a processed food item, you don't have to worry about the country of origin statement. Here's examples of if it's produced in the U.S., if it's imported, if it's commingled with another covered commodity, you're going to want to label both. So here's the kinds of terms, and most importantly, here's your citations, so you can go look at those on the internet. Here is your resource page. There's all kinds of information here. Unfortunately, sometimes the FDA stuff is a little confusing, but it's there. You just have to weed through it. And again, this FDA food labeling guide is a very good resource. So with that, I am over time, but here you go. And you can, if you have questions, you can talk to Charbel or Rowan, and they will help you with your answers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone has questions. We have one question in the Q&A box, but if anyone has a question, please feel free to ask now, or maybe you can send us your questions later on and we can contact Jan. We have, Jan, one question regarding the sugar-free claim. They are asking, what is a sugar-free claim?
So I would want to look this up in the food, in the claims in the manual, in that food labeling guide, to be absolutely sure. But I'm pretty sure that a sugar-free claims means you're not adding additional sugar. A sugar-free in general would mean there is no sugar anywhere in the product. But that's why you have to look at that, and I don't have that in front of me right now to give you a good answer. But that's included in there as a structure function claim. And I think it's important to make sure that you understand that. I'm sorry, I don't have the complete answer with me right now.
Okay, yeah, and in the presentation we have the link for the claims. So if anyone has a question related to a specific claim, they can go directly and check it in the link.
Yes.
Okay, so let me see in the chat. Okay, so I believe we don't have questions anymore. Let me check again. Okay, so thank you again, John. The session was very informative. So much information. And also for everyone here, we will share the presentation with all the people that already registered, and we have your emails. So hopefully we will be sending it by tomorrow. And again, if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. So thank you again, John, and thank you everyone for attending today's session.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Evie.
Yes, thank you, Jan. There is another question, it looks like, on registration of a facility with FDA, and that's a different topic than food labeling.
But for that, you can find good information on the FDA website for that. Be aware that even after your initial registration on even numbered years, which this would be one, you have to re-register on even number years. And so if you're going to get registered, be aware that in October through December, you'll be asked to register again. But if you just look on the FDA website for facility registration, you'll find it.
And then also agents in the U.S. You know, we don't really recommend, we don't have any recommendations, but again, you can, and I don't know, Rowan or Charbel, if you have any thoughts on that, but yeah, you can just do some research online for agents in the U.S. Are you talking about importers or to help import your product into the U.S.? I'm not really sure what you mean by an agent. There are companies that will help you with the facility registration if you need help with that, but it's a pretty simple process.
Yeah, I was going to say, please don't pay anybody to help you register because it's very simple and you don't want to, there's no reason to pay someone to help you for that. You can do it.
Yeah, it takes a max, you know, you just have to have key information. And I will send Rowan the link for that registration.
Oh, good idea.
A legal agent. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that that might be an importer.
I would think, but I'm not sure either.
U.S. agent as part of the registration, I think.
Yeah, if I think he's called Ahmed. So Ahmed, if you can send us additional information through email, and maybe we can check with Jan and Evie regarding this topic.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so thank you again. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Evie. And thank you all for attending today's session. And yeah, hopefully we see you in another sessions.
Thanks again.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.